welcome to this episode of the Trainer Feed. We have a special guest. David Bravo's dad is coming on to the episode today.
Happy birthday, David's birthday.
Happy birthday. No, David, who is our guest today?
It's Keith Allaway. He's a trainer, co-worker, and he's been one of my mentors since the beginning of my training career.
That's awesome.
Not related at all. He's
unofficial father figure.
White, and I'm not. And he's English.
You can have a dad that's like that doesn't look like you.
But it's crazy because, my dad is alive.
You can have two dads.
Nah, I'm okay.
All right. Should we bring him on?
Let's do it. Mr. Keith Allaway.
Keith Allaway. Chief Keith.
Chief Keith.
Oh, shit. Let's hope he knows how to work this thing.
Here he is.
Hey. Hi, Keith.
Keith, can you hear us? Oh, shit.
Now I have to be polite.
What's up, Keith?
I have to behave myself now. How are you
No,
guys?
not much. Not all the.
Not all the time.
Not all the time.
All right, I'll try and rein it in a little bit then.
Perfect.
Hi, Keith. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing? It's been a while.
It's been a very long time. Yeah, I would say over a year now, at least.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
Yeah.
I just saw you earlier today, Keith.
You guys live together.
I'm not talking to you, David.
Yeah.
David, just shut up.
Have you come off the high of the Chelsea victory over the weekend?
I will never come off that high.
You should have seen him.
It's hard for me to say. I wasn't quote rooting for them, but I just want Man City to lose more. That's how I phrased it. I was like, no, I think I'd rather see Man City lose than Chelsea. And Chelsea have already won it, right? That was the second time they won it in like 9 years
2009.
or something. I remember seeing it, yeah. So
I wanted Man City to win just to take Keith's money, but
oh, you bet with Keith about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, $50.
Oh, you silly man.
Hey, the whole last half, Keith was just like shaking. And
I was somewhat embarrassed by myself because I was that guy sitting on the edge of the sofa, kicking every ball.
He's like this,
every tackle. Just because
every time. Especially when Pulisic should have buried that. That would have made it easier if you're up 2-0 as opposed to 1.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we didn't need that, so that was good. And then there was obviously Rudiger trying to rein De Bruyne.
Yeah, he destroyed his face. That guy's face is in one piece.
He's too pretty anyway. It'll build character for
him. Oh man, funny.
What else has been going on with you guys? How you been doing?
Pretty good. We've been launching this. I know Dan probably spoke to you that we had her on almost a year ago now. It's been this long that we've been doing this.
That's right.
And probably for the most, I'd say, doing some in-person training probably since last summer, but probably since we left 76th Street in January. We were at Sports Club 2 months before COVID happened. So it's 2 months of being there and everything is like everyone else, pretty much just doing everything virtually. And then slowly getting back into it, half and half. Some people still want to stay virtually and some people want to come in person. And I'd say that's probably been the majority of it. And it's been a challenge, but I'm sure same for you and David at 76th Street. Not everyone came back, but
do you still have many virtual clients, Keith, or did they all come back?
Me?
At least
I would probably say like 2/3 of my business is still virtual.
Wow.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm probably in the same boat too.
What people are telling me is that they don't really want to come back till the end of the summer probably. But a lot of that is because these were the kind of people that would go away for the summer anyway. So
there are summer houses, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So they'll be back when they'll be back. So
their fourth or fifth house, just whichever.
But the good thing is that they've discovered virtual, so
that you don't lose out on sessions, right? Before these people, if they would go to the Hamptons or the Shore, whatever it was maybe I'll see you once a week instead of 2 or 3 times, or I'll see you in 2 months. Now it's that we can at least keep that 2 or 3 times a week and it'd be virtual, and you don't even have to commute. So there's been. Not that COVID has been a good thing, but there's been a blessing in all this is that we still are able to maintain our business and they still are able to stay on track. So there's been some for sure.
So that's been the upside to it. If there really was one.
Yeah, one of the few.
And now we're in this kind of weird situation where we're doing this hybrid. So it's about, I mean, the hard part right now is just scheduling.
Yeah.
Because I still have virtual learning I need to do, and then kind of integrating that with the kind of getting out there in the real world again and trying to figure out how that's going to work. And being a natural introvert, I was kind of happy in shutdown. So.
Oh yeah, Keith.
I was built for this. I'm a misanthrope and I'm a tremendous introvert. So I was built for this. I've actually been very comfortable. My wife, on the other hand, has been going out of her mind.
She's stuck there with you, Keith.
Huh?
She's stuck with you.
I think it's the other way around, David. I think I'm the one that's suffering from Stockholm syndrome.
Oh my God. Hey, so with people during COVID, with people that you've had online, how have you been structuring their workouts? I mean, have you changed anything in terms of what equipment they have? Have you recommended them get specific equipment, or have they been just hesitant to not want to do anything?
Oddly enough, pivoting towards virtual was not difficult at all for most people. I think a lot of them also wanted, especially in that immediate part of the shutdown, they wanted that sort of distraction. They wanted something that sort of reminded them of normalcy. In that sort of, there's something that's scheduled, there's something that they have to do that wasn't work and took them out of it. So as far as the actual workouts, yeah, obviously a lot of it was scaled differently because without having access to certain kinds of equipment, a lot of clients did buy equipment. Kettlebells were very popular when people could actually get them.
Angel took all of them.
Yeah, I'm sure. So, people did go out there, they did buy some equipment and added slowly throughout the year as they sort of realized this is going to take a lot longer than they expected. And some of them also already had some things. So it was a matter of just adapting and just sort of being flexible with what particular specific objectives they might have and kind of being realistic about what they could and couldn't do because what was available to them.
Yeah.
But a lot of my clients are somewhat older, so it didn't impact too much on what we were able to do. Focusing on a little bit more mobility work and a little bit more sort of that kind of stuff rather than sort of the pure weightlifting that they'd become accustomed to doing with me at the gym. So that's really how I worked it. It was actually relatively a smooth transition. It wasn't that different in many respects for some of them. And it was very workable.
Nice. I wanted to pivot a little bit and ask you about what your opinion would be on, or what do you think are the pros and cons of sort of the past, maybe like decade and a half of more barbell programs being implemented in gyms, for example, CrossFit or like warehouse gyms, what that impact has been on clientele and members joining gyms, if it's been a positive or more of a negative?
I think overall it's been a positive.
Mm-hmm.
If I can speak from my own experience as a weightlifting coach and working in that genre and that kind of area, one of the things that has been really encouraging has been, since I first really took sort of coaching weightlifting seriously and starting to go to competitions, and you've experienced some of this with me, is we would go to some of these regional meets and there might be, say, 70 people, of which a good 2/3 of those would be male and a smattering of women competitors. And in the last 10 years, what has changed in that arena is that you'll see on a weekend now at the same regional competition, 200, 300 people registered and showing up. And the proportion of women is at least, if not even more than half.
Yeah.
So there's been a massive upsurge in women who have been able, some of it has been because of their association with CrossFit. And they've discovered that, they can use a barbell, they can get strong, they can be very athletic. And there's nothing, and that's been really sort of the most encouraging thing for me and the most exciting thing. To see that expansion and sort of, the greater participation in that way. So I think in that regard, it's been very positive. Obviously, from our standpoint, sometimes you get people coming in doing sort of lifts and barbell lifts that they're not particularly prepared for, that they definitely should have some help with because they don't really understand the basics. But I think overall it's been a very positive thing. I think the idea of, something that's been around for a very, very long time, and just this reawakening of this idea that this is very valuable, and it has the ability of getting people very strong very quickly, and also working on those things that people want is mobility and athleticism and all those things. So I think in that regard, it's been very positive.
Cool.
I wanted to kind of touch base on some foundational stuff about Keith. And I wanted to know about your journey. If you could enlighten the audience as to your journey into the fitness industry. When did it start? And how did you get to the point where you are at right now?
Well, that's a long journey. That's been a long time.
Oh yeah.
Maybe the highlights of it. Maybe we can go over the highlights.
Maybe just the highlights.
Keith was Peter Pan one day. That's a good one.
Yeah, but I've actually grown up and I'm now old. So as a trainer, as that part of my journey, I've been a personal trainer, weightlifting coach for 20 years, a little bit over 20 years. My weightlifting journey really started way back when I was in college. I was playing rugby, and I had a college coach I was very small, and I was a little reedy, skinny little kid. And he basically said I needed to put on some weight, and he sent me over to the local weightlifting club. And that's how I started weightlifting myself. I was probably 18 years old at the time. And then after that, after I got out of college, was having some issues, and I turned to bodybuilding to create a healthier lifestyle for myself. I actually became a vegetarian for a while, and through that period, I started to kind of reevaluate, what fitness was. I kind of flirted with bodybuilding, did a couple of competitions, decided that wasn't for me, and then life took different turns. I ended up in the US and sort of meandered around doing various different things. And then about 20 plus years ago, I actually had a girlfriend who got a job as a personal trainer because I was working in the restaurant business at the time. And it sort of struck me like, oh, I could do that for a living. I work out, I know about training. So I got a job at a Crunch way back in like the early 2000s, late 1990s. Like a lot of people, went in there thinking that I knew everything, and I was really good at what I did, and found out very quickly I didn't know my ass from my elbow. And decided at that point that if I was going to do this, because I really enjoyed what I was doing, working with my clients and working with them, that I needed to educate myself and become, from my point of view, the best trainer that I could be. And that's basically what I've been pursuing for the last 20 years, taking every opportunity I can to take classes, especially in the weightlifting arena. I've worked with some really very good coaches. I've learned a great deal from them in person, just watching them, going to seminars. And that's really been my journey. I think the most profound lessons I've learned have been through weightlifting and the coaching lessons that they have taught me. And I think that's the biggest difference, and that's what's made me the coach that I am, hopefully a good one.
Do you, just out of curiosity, I know you spoke about like doing different classes and things like that. Have you ever tried like yoga or Pilates? Like has it been primarily weightlifting and strength training, or have you like dabbled with a couple of other different types of fitness things, maybe dance?
I would say dabble is a very good term for it. I have taken yoga before. The last time I took yoga, my initial reaction was that if the teacher touched me one more time, I was going to punch him in the face. And I realized that was not exactly what they were looking for or going for. It wasn't quite the meditative experience I hoped it would be.
I don't think you want to think of that while you're doing yoga, Keith.
I don't think that is. I think my attitude going in was not correct. So I don't necessarily say I haven't really used it as sort of try to integrate it into my training. As far as Pilates is concerned, I have my own opinions about Pilates and its efficacy. But I definitely have experienced it. I have done Pilates. I have taken some classes in it, and I have experienced it. I mean, part of my philosophy has always been don't knock something at least until you tried it on yourself. I mean, a lot of what I've learned about training has been experimenting on myself. I've been doing it long enough. I've tried just about every modality that you can think of at some point, and either integrated it or moved it to the side as just something that maybe something I need to reference, but don't necessarily need in my practice.
We should go to LA and try goat yoga. Have you heard of that?
I like goats. Goats are lovely.
It's a big trend in LA.
Creatures.
It would just take a yoga class with little baby goats, and they're like walking all over you while you're doing the yoga. It's insane. It's ridiculous.
But I wouldn't be doing any yoga. I'd just be playing with damn goats.
It was online. It was on Instagram.
David's actually certified in yoga, goat yoga. He hasn't told us.
That does not surprise me at all.
Listen, baby goats are cute.
That's why he's always busy. He's actually just training of goats in his apartment or something.
So he's the goat whisperer now? Is that what he's become?
That's what he keeps in that side door.
So
Let's not go back to know what he keeps in that back side door.
It's my bedroom.
I'm sure it is.
So good.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Yeah.
My God. Anyway, so to piggyback off of Angel's question about classes that you've taken or courses and seminars.
Yeah.
Is there a specific class or course that has impacted you the most, or that you think if it was offered today, everybody should take it?
Specifically, no. I mean, this was years and years ago. I took a course, and I'm now forgetting the name of the coach that took it, and it was just an insight into. It was probably close to the end of the 90s.
Oh, okay.
And it was a course about the impact of immune diseases on exercise. And it was just an insight into the work that people were doing and trying to kind of create an inclusive community, understanding what the challenges might be for people with certain different disabilities, and how to modulate your training to accommodate them. And there are lessons that I learned then, but this was almost 20 years ago when I was first beginning, talking about the effect of his particular research was particularly about HIV patients.
Okay.
And how intensity of exercise could affect their immune systems. And it was just a good lesson in the impact of what we do and how we have to be sensitive to kind of how can we accommodate everybody in an entryway to bring them into kind of weight training if for whatever reason their own system is compromised. So that was an interesting lesson. It's certainly not offered anymore because that was a long time ago. But I think the most impactful things to me were when I were taking the coaching lessons, when I was helping out, teaching a local coach, Mike McKenna, who on the Northeast region does a lot of the coaching for USAW. And I would work with him. And for him, it was just sitting in on his classes, listening to him talk, seeing how he structured the coaching and the teaching of itself. And just allowing me to see a wide variety of different people and coaching them to improve my eye as a coach itself. You know, what different things do you come up against? You know, how do you overcome people's barriers to kind of learning certain things and learning different coaching techniques? Mike McKenna, if you don't know him, I know David does, has been greatly influential to me in the last 10 years. I have a great deal of respect for him. I think he's one of the best coaches there are out there that nobody knows about.
He's a big fucking guy. He's
a very big gentleman, and he's quite scary, but he's a big teddy bear.
He's a teddy bear.
Yeah, I mean, but he's also a really good coach, and he's a really good teacher.
Yeah, wow. You mentioned about trying to be a better coach, you know, years after years, and how would, from everything you've known, how would you structure a basic beginner program for somebody that you would see that probably has no background in athletics, no background in weightlifting, and their primary goal is to just get stronger?
Well, no different to anyone else. The first thing I want to do is I want to see, how do they move?
Mm-hmm.
How do they react under stress? Give them a bar. See how they move under the bar. See what they do. Don't give them any input. Just let them do what they do. And then scale it from there. I mean, something I talk about with anyone I work with is there's always an entry point. You know, people can be intimidated, especially with barbell work or with weights, because they've seen images or videos of people working with incredible weights or doing incredible feats. There's always an entry point, even if it's just a bar, even if it's a dowel. There's something you can start with and start patterning the movements that you need to learn, those basic techniques, those basic movement patterns. There's always an entry point. And it doesn't need to be as intimidating as I think some people think it might be. So it's really just, you know, where's your start point? You know, where are you? What kind of skills do you come with or don't come with? And then finding where that entry point is, and then just working from there, and then scaling from there.
Cool.
In your experience, do you find, I know this is a very general question, so apologies ahead of time. Do you find that there's more of a challenge or obstacles in regards to stability or mobility in the stability mobility continuum?
I think the challenge is more to do with, I think, a misunderstanding of what those two things are. I think there's a sort of interpretation of what stability is, and a lot of it is fed by different fads that have come and gone in the fitness industry. You know, what does stability really mean? What does mobility really mean? And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding, misinformation out there, and getting to sort of the purity of what do we mean really by stability, and just in a pure sort of academic way, it's, you know, can you maintain your center of mass over your center of base? That's what stability means in its purest essence. And that's what it really means. So for a lot of people, and again, I know it sounds very simplistic, is get your feet under a bar. Do you not fall over? If you don't fall over, you're stable.
That's actually a really cool way to think about it. I never thought about it that way.
So I think a lot of it is that because of, again, fads in the industry, there's been this emphasis on what stability is and what mobility is. And a lot of it is more to do with marketing, with what the actual kind of essence of what it is and what it means in the first place.
That also just reminds me of a couple of other episodes that we had where people were talking about how sometimes when you have a new client or you have, you know, somebody come up to you and say, hey, I want to train, you have to lay that groundwork in regards to creating the foundation of, I'm going to communicate to you, I'm going to say some things that you might not understand, but I'm going to explain them afterwards. Like, you have to almost educate as you go through everything, because sometimes you just don't know necessarily where the problems are. It could just be vocabulary and a misunderstanding of everything, because it's, you know, it's sexy to sell like shake weights, right? And market it as a stability exercise or a stability tool, right? But does it really do anything? The answer is no. But anyway.
Well, I think that's the biggest part of our job, I think, is communication and education, because there is so much misinformation out there. And I think and this is true with any profession, every profession creates a vernacular that creates this inherent opacity to everybody else, so that we develop this idea, well, we have this inside knowledge, we have this information that you don't have or you can't grasp because you're an outsider, so we can sell that to you.
Sign up here for the free 5-day course.
So I think a big part of our job is to break down those barriers, is to kind of find language that kind of cuts through that, so that we can communicate what we want from them, and so that they understand what the journey is we're trying to take them on is going to be. So a lot of times it's sort of, for want of a better term, cutting through the BS and just sort of kind of placing it in as simple as terms as it is. And I keep coming back to sort of what I learned from kind of coaching Olympic weightlifting. It is those lessons of having different learning styles and different ways of approaching different people that I think helps a great deal of, how do you make it clear of what you want from somebody? How do you communicate that idea? Where, again, it goes back to what's that entry point? Where is that point where you can make it clear so that you're both sort of unified and going into the same direction? And it takes a little work. And sometimes that relationship can take a little bit of time to develop between people, because you have to learn what somebody responds to, and they have to really learn how you are trying to communicate. And there has to be an openness. I think we have to kind of it has to be a dialogue, and we have to kind of try and make it go both ways. So if they have questions, or if we have questions, there's an openness. And a lot of that is built about building trust, making sure that, obviously they're vested in you in kind of a financial sense because they're paying for your services, but also that they trust that you're there for their best interests.
Mm-hmm. I want to piggyback off some things you mentioned with, breaking through the BS, and you've mentored, obviously, David, some of us, for example, and then very many coaches that came through the ranks at 76th Street. What have been some of the more common themes or patterns that you're reinforcing coaching wise with anyone that you take under your wing?
The first thing is keep it simple, especially in the beginning. I think there are, in the field that we kind of know very explicitly, there's sort of this health club scenario as employees. There's a financial imperative. There's also a kind of a managerial imperative that puts pressure on us. And I think it goes back to kind of any craft or anything you're trying to learn, is learn the basics first. Don't try and learn everything all at once, because it becomes overwhelming. And what I see quite a lot is people do get overwhelmed. There's so much information. There's always some sort of supposed innovation coming out. And I would always urge everyone right from the beginning, just learn the very basics, get those basic foundational things underneath you, really understand them, and everything just flows from there in the end. If you have the understanding of those basic things, those more complex ideas, you now know where they come from. You now can validate whether they're good or not, because you have this foundation underneath.
I was just going to say, the foundation.
I think it's very easy for people to get overwhelmed.
And retouching what you said with when people have these new innovations, there's always claims of a discovery or a new method. And as you said, I think whenever you break down, I actually want to tie in the next question I have for you, but when you break down a program to an extent, it's really pushes, pulls, hinges, and knee dominant exercises, and then trunk stability. Everything falls under those 5. So it's not a case of, even though you said the bodybuilding experience, which I think perhaps my understanding or some of our understanding of a program style with that is by muscle group, right? Whereas the way we've been coaching for the last 5 or 10, 20 plus years, as you're saying, is more on those 5 somewhat principles of the pushing and pulling and keeping it simple, right? That kind of leads me into asking, when you design your own program, I know you've had, and this goes in reference to also David and Angel's clients, when they're, same with your clients, I've seen this in the club, when they're working out by themselves, you've taught them the extent that when they're by themselves, they're doing the program or the style that you taught them, right? And that to me, as I've said, is that you've done your job well, that even when they're by themselves, the method of working out training is still true the way you taught them, because they're doing it when they're by themselves, whether it's they were deadlifting, whether it was all bench pressing or something. So when it comes to your program, how do you typically design it? How do you branch out and scheme things?
For me personally?
Yeah, I want to hear about this.
So for me personally, something that has become more evident as I've gotten a little older is I almost pared it down almost to even the most basic things. So something that I talk about a lot with my clients and with everybody is that there's this training is one thing, and there's this secondary element that we don't tend to pay enough attention to, which is the recovery process. As an older person, I can't train as intensely or as often as I used to be able to, because I just can't recover for all sorts of different reasons. So I've pared it down to kind of very basic things that I know I can execute well, I've become comfortable with. I want to train to maintain a certain level of strength most of the time, but I also want to be active in certain things. So there's an interesting flexion point right now is that in a couple of weeks, I'm going to go on do a mini weekend bike tour. So I have to be able to ride 100 miles in a day comfortably. So obviously heavy weight training doesn't lend itself to that. At the same time, so I have to get enough miles in. So I have the conditioning to do that 100 miles without dying.
Slight detail.
So over the last few weeks, I've toned down the kind of intensity of the weight training a little bit. I'm now basically just doing 2 days a week of relatively intense weight training, but doing a lot more days where I'm just trying to get as many miles on the bike as possible. Just to get comfortable of sitting on the bike several hours at a time. And so it's a matter of just looking at, where am I at in any given point in a year? What am I trying to drive towards? So even though I don't, in general, have sort of really specific goals, I'm not competing at anything. I don't have a competition coming up. I don't have, I don't have to look beach ready or whatever it might be. I try and pick certain, not yet.
We'll see Keith in a onesie soon.
I think those days are gone anyway.
I did bore onesie.
Nobody wants to see me in a Speedo. Not even my wife, which is kind of sad.
Old Diana.
So for me, it's similar to what we do with our clients, is trying to pick some sort of inflection point where I'm kind of training towards something at least. Whether it was, my previous training cycle, I spent some time, I wanted to hit certain numbers into basic lifts. I wanted to hit a certain number in a squat. I wanted to hit a certain number in the deadlift. So I created a program around that. And it's about cycling it. And sometimes, and at this point for myself, a lot of my training can be intuitive. Because, you work towards a specific goal and you start losing the leverage that you had at the beginning of a training program where you're sort of plateauing out. So now what do I do? Do I have to wave under? Do I change the program completely, take a break? So, it's all about also being aware of where I'm at physically. And obviously, as we all get a little bit older, some of that changes and some of that becomes, in many respects, the program writes itself.
On that note of recovery, what's interesting when we spoke about but supposedly new trends happening, but there's perhaps more emphasis on recovery more than anything, or as you said, keeping it simple. And it really, if you stay away from, we've mentioned this with a couple of other of our guests as well, when it comes to recovery, just make sure you sleep, eat clean, drink plenty of water. When you talk just now about not being able to work out as intense, or do you feel it's that you need more days rest? Do you feel you need more sleep on average? Do you think it just means that the rep sets with the patterns you're doing have to be altered to help with recovery? Break that down a little bit for us. I
think it's all of those things. I think you hit it on the head. The first thing you said was sleep. I think the one thing that a lot of us cheat first is getting enough sleep, creating a schedule, or creating a sort of, a regular sleep pattern, which is very difficult for a lot of people. As someone in their late 50s, it's difficult for me to even sleep through the night because of various injuries. I just wake up, I'll wake up, my arm is numb and I can't get and that's just a factor of just living long enough. So how do I manage that? So, being aware and being intuitive enough when I walk into the gym that day, when I have, I'm scheduled to do a particular workout, knowing I may have to modify this. That's why I always stress when I'm working with all of my clients, that's what the part of what the warm-up is about. The warm-up is not necessarily about I just need to get ready for what I'm about to do. It's also informing me, how ready am I to do this? You know, is what I have planned today even going to happen? You know, is my hip cranky? Is my shoulder really cranky? So what do I need to change even on the fly? I know we talk a lot about programs, but I train to the client or I train to myself. I don't train necessarily. The program itself is a template to follow to some sort of specific outcome, but it's still just a template, and it has to be modified and changed on any given day. I'm lucky enough to be intuitive enough to know what's going to work on any given. And sometimes you get surprised. Sometimes you have a really good day when you feel like crap, and sometimes you have a really bad day when you feel like, oh, I got great sleep, I'm rested, I ate well. And it just doesn't work. I mean, on the continuum, you just got to look at, it's only just one day. Any particular workout is just one day out of hundreds, thousands of.
To have a consistent process. Yeah. One. Yeah.
So it's exactly that. The process itself needs to be consistent, not necessarily the outcomes per se. And I think we sometimes get too wrapped up on specific outcomes and not understanding it is a process. And that process is often not perfect. You know, injuries happen, things happen, life happens that interrupt that. I mean, if the last year has not taught us anything, that the really unexpected could happen. And how do you adapt to that? But if you can stick with some form of process, then you'll always be served by that. And that becomes your anchor, the process in and of itself. I would argue with one point that you made about, you mentioned clean eating. Mm-hmm. And I have an issue with that term.
Gloves are coming off.
Oh shit. Let's go.
Because
he asked for it.
And that comes out of this whole kind of wellness movement that we're going through right now, another one of these waves and fads. I would like us not to be careful about the language we use when we're describing something. To say that something is clean, that means that something is unclean. And that creates a value, an emotional or a judgmental value on something. And I think we need to be very careful about that, especially when we talk about something that is a subject diet, which is so loaded for so many people. Mm-hmm. I think the language that we use, we have to be much more careful how we pass that out.
Yeah.
I don't like to think of clean or unclean foods, because that kind of creates a value on something that puts too much weight on it. And that, I think, can be troublesome for some people. And that can lead people through certain behaviors that are not necessarily healthy for themselves when it's interpreted in that way.
No, I think that's a very good point. I think I probably should have defined it better. And we've had people as well that speak to this. They mentioned play foods. Am I right, guys? That was some.
So we spoke to a registered dietitian, and one point she made, because Jacques said something about cheap food or something. Yeah.
And
she also gave him a spanking because she said that all food has nutritional values. So there is no junk food. And when you say junk food or cheap meals or whatever, it's implying that there's something, that's better. The opposite of what he said with clean eating or clean foods, it's like the opposite. So she said, if you were dying, if you were trying to survive and somebody threw you a gummy bear and you ate the gummy bear, would you survive? Would you have a higher likelihood to survive? The answer is yes. And that's why there is no junk food.
Yeah, I think that's that kind of language. I mean, we live in a country as well, and I've certainly lived in certain neighborhoods where there are sort of nutritional deserts because of lack of opportunity of getting sort of what we so-called healthy food, and a lot of food insecurity. So that when we label things as clean as unclean, that can often be sort of turned into a self-fulfilling prophecy, is that people aren't deserving of food in certain ways because they eat what we determine as junk food. And we have to be very careful about how we use that language, because that can kind of create division, and it doesn't open up the conversation. It creates a barrier rather than opening the conversation and an entry point for us to start.
No, I agree. I think that's definitely something that can be, I should be more specific about. And I guess what I was leading off was just as close to the natural source as possible. But again,
that's whole food.
Well, no, I just if
No,
if
not Whole
someone
Foods. I
asks-
mean, it could be.
Yeah, no, that's-
Don't get me started on Whole Foods, because I'm going to be going off on a rant, and I might break the
with the computer.
Keith has left the chat because he's smashed the screen now.
Yeah.
But I think that again, I mean, even that term in itself is like, we have to kind of get closer to the source. There are certain I mean, this is going a little bit off topic, but there are places around, even in this city, where that's just not possible. You know, if we talk about food deserts, you go to certain neighborhoods, you go into a local grocery store, and the grocery store has 2 massive aisles with just sugary cereals in it and sugary sodas. And the produce is basically just a large refrigerator. And that's what's available in there, because they're economically or challenged neighborhoods, with also sort of, you know, trying to find the right word before I piss everybody off.
Yeah, just
Sort of
take your time.
Social, economically.
Social economic background.
There you go.
Where companies don't want to, they don't see the value, or they don't see how they can monetize that enough. So I think we need to be careful when we start using those kind of words as kind of like forcing people, you've got to do this. You've got to see where people are and then work with that.
100%.
Rather than imposing an idea onto them of, you have to do it this way. If you don't do it this way, then you're going to fail. We have to find an entry point into where they are, and then find the leverage, and then change that behavior incrementally. It's not going to be, and this is the thing that we fail with a lot of times, even with our own clients, because you can't do everything all at once. Just take a little bite at it. Where can we find a change? Where we could find a small habit change, a small behavioral change, gives us a little bit of leverage that leads to the next step, and then the next step, and the next step. And it goes back to what we were talking with Jacques. It's about the process. This is a process. It's going to take time, because we're also changing behaviors. We're learning new behaviors. We're breaking old habits. So we have to invest in that. This is not going to be sort of a one and done thing in a very short period of time.
It'll happen overnight. Yeah.
But,
no,
you know,
well said. Well said.
Never mind.
And these are sort of habits and behaviors that need to become sort of just part of our
Everyday life. Eventually, over time. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's sort of instilling that into people.
I have a question. It's probably a little bit off of what we were chatting about, but what are your, so I've had this conversation with clients in the past about their own kids, or when they see kids lifting weights. And a lot of the biggest thing they would say is, oh, they shouldn't be lifting weights because it'll stunt their growth. What's your opinion on that notion?
First of all, it's just not true. That is not true. It will not stunt their growth. I think it's a valuable lesson for anyone. I mean, you know,
even if they're like getting into sports, you know, like getting into adolescent sports.
I think that's one of the elements that I think where we've often failed kids in general anyway. I mean, it's sort of an idea that we deal with our adult clients is, you get strong and fit to play a sport. You don't play a sport to get strong and fit. That's the performative part. You need to do some training to be resilient enough to withstand the stresses of the sport that you're playing. So for a kid, I think it's very important. And I think one of the things that is slowly starting to change, and one of the kind of the bright things about what's happening on the resurgence of weightlifting, is that there's become an entry point for a lot of young women, that it's okay for them to be stronger. It's okay for them to be athletic. You know, you look at the growth of things like the Women's Premier League in England, in Europe, in England, and then the women's football leagues. The example of watching the US, as you Americans would say, soccer team.
Thank you.
Being so successful. So I think it's vital. I think actually the sooner you can start with kids, teaching them that there's a physicality that they need to learn, there's a kind of a robustness, and there's a resilience that they need to develop so that they can enjoy these physical activities. And I think it also kind of creates a certain level of discipline. It creates a structure that so often I think people are looking for. And it starts teaching that idea of we're actually part of a process here. It's part of a bigger continuum.
Yeah.
But the idea that it stunts growth is just not true. It's just a fallacy that's been out there for too long.
No, yeah. Last year I took a course. It was a webinar thing with Mike Boyle through the Perform Better Summer Series. I don't know if you guys probably took any of those courses, but he mentioned that about training the youth and how
the youth. What are they? A pack of dogs? The youth. What?
Adolescents, Keith. Teenagers. They're a band.
What? Your people?
Oh my God! Listen. We're not okay. We're not gonna get into this, Keith. But he was mentioning about the whole sports-specific training, about how you have these trainers marking themselves as that, when in reality, sports-specific training is basically just going to practice.
David loves that topic. David talks about that like every other podcast.
Love it.
Well, because it's true, this idea that the sport itself is the performance. The preparation you do, the skill sets you learn is sort of what you do during those training sessions for that. But there's a certain level of strength conditioning that you need to do to be able to do that and to perform at a high level and intensity. So they're not separate, but they're two somewhat separate things. I would say, and this is why I'm so sort of an advocate for barbell and strength training, is strength itself is just an attribute. It's not a skill per se, but it's an attribute that is applicable to everything, because it's creating a systemic resilience in a system so that can withstand the stresses of what the demands we're placing on that system. And that's where it becomes important. You can get through that practice. When you get bounced off another player playing lacrosse, or when you get tackled by a football player, if your body is strong enough to withstand those forces, you won't get injured as much. You'll be able to compete harder. You'll be able to play harder. So strength itself is not part of that skill set. It's just it's an attribute that you need to attain to a certain level just to be successful in the performance. And a lot of natural athletes are just natural athletes anyway. Part of the thing, a lot of those, is really good, and it's not, strength training is not sport specific, it's life specific. Mm-hmm. If we just make ourselves more resilient and stronger, everything else becomes easy.
So the next time you see David, you're going to tackle him.
Oh, I wish he did.
Every time I see him.
I wish that's like in Jackass. They just tackle each other in the middle of the public. You guys ever saw that?
I wish Keith would try to tackle me. I would lay him out so quick. Drop my shoulder.
All right. So.
Okay. All right.
So next week, you don't know what day, but
Angel, Jacques, you heard it first.
I take it back. Yeah. I take it back. No,
don't take it back.
I'm gonna start playing rugby though. I'm gonna get Nick.
Are you actually gonna do it?
So this summer, apparently guys, to Angel and Jacques, you probably don't know, Nick was just bugging me for the past couple of weeks to play rugby.
Because he plays, right? Nick does?
In the league that he plays. And last night he was texting me, he's like, all right, come to practice. It's tonight at 7. Like, you're out of your mind. I had to work. And then he basically just said that last night was the last practice. There's a game coming up this weekend, and that I should play next season. So we'll see. I don't know. I mean, it does seem very fun, but my whole thing is back to what Keith said about, not getting hurt as easily if you're strong.
Well, you're going to play rugby, David. So I'll tell you this one piece of wisdom from lots of experience.
Wear a mouth shield.
Get hurt.
Yeah.
Wear a mouth shield. Yeah, definitely that. And you might want to think about a cup too, or some sort of protection down there.
I don't have.
I never wore anything down there.
I like how Keith wasn't even concerned about your teeth.
Keith doesn't give a fuck, man.
I'm English. Why am I concerned about anybody's teeth? I don't care. Mine are terrible. I still have a hillbilly gap right here because I chipped a tooth last year. I haven't got fixed yet.
Oh my goodness!
How'd you chip that tooth?
I'm trying to take you out, David, but you missed him.
Anyway,
but the other thing I'll say about if you play, because I played for 10 years, ask him is.
Oh shit!
I played in the town was invented. I played on the field where it was invented.
He also has a master's in chemistry. Shit. Oh yeah.
I keep that. I'm done. The other thing I will say as well, though, David, is find out. Do a bit not more research, but find out when you watch it, just what, because there's 15 players, but there's technically like 10 different positions. So find out what you
I forgot
think
what position I was told.
in the forwards.
No.
Keith, you're muted.
Hooker.
Hooker.
Is that
You look like a hooker to me, David. I'll tell you that much.
Oh man,
No, that's the position. Yeah, you're right in the middle. That's I would have said anywhere in the pack, the forwards, because they're usually the stronger ones. Some of the ones in the back aren't.
Keith, come play with us.
I think David would make a very good prop.
I was thinking prop or second row.
Prop, that was it. Okay.
Prop or second row.
Prop or second row.
Yeah.
Although these days, second row are usually a little bit taller.
They're a bit taller, yeah. In the
Because they want them in the lineouts.
Yeah.
I used to play hooker when I played.
I believe that. I see that.
But that was back in the day when the hooker actually used to hook the ball. I don't know if you've seen a modern rugby game.
They just feed the ball, don't they?
I've never seen the ball go in straight ever.
They just feed it.
What does that mean? What do you mean hook the ball?
So when the equivalent of like the line of scrimmage in the NFL, right? When they hike the ball, it's like the closest thing, except you engage in an 8v8 kind of
collision.
Yeah, but right, and then
it's a hug. It's a gentle hug.
It's a 16-man hug, right?
Oh, okay.
And the scrum half, the number 9, he feeds the ball. It's how you reset play if there was a stoppage of play. But you're supposed to feed it down the middle. But as Keith was just alluding to, they never feed it in the middle. They go to their side. So you just win it a guarantee. Because it's like a 50-50. As opposed to the center in the NFL feeding about the quarterback, that's pretty much guaranteed the quarterback's going to get it. But in rugby, in the scrum, it's meant to be a 50-50, supposedly.
So this summer, he's going to start teaching me how to play that. So we'll see. But
alluding to what some of the conversations we were talking about earlier, the best way you're going to learn is just by playing the game.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
It's just get out there on the field and just, get on the field and just get into the rhythm of the game and learning how to do it. I mean, one thing you will need to do is learn how to tackle properly, because tackling in rugby is very different to the way it's done in football.
Well, they don't tackle in the NFL. They tackle like idiots. They just throw their heads in. Because you don't have a actual head protection, you have to tackle properly, I like to say.
Yeah, I mean, the only experience I've had with contact, like body contact in lacrosse, was just like checking, like hip checking or
so you can't do that in rugby. You have to actually tackle someone.
Take the man down,
and take the man down.
I'm saying, Keith, you come near me at work, it's going down.
Keith's going to be like, I'm just showing you how it's done. Poof, takes him out when you're with a client. Oh. Client's about to get the stretch.
You understand it. Playing rugby is the reason I'm such a handsome older man that I am now, because I got so many blows to the head. That's why I broke my nose 5 times.
Oh my God!
See, you're not
4 concussions.
Play this anymore than
David's. It's fun, David. There's nothing better. It's really exhilarating. I know it came up earlier that I follow soccer. I'm really trying to
call it football. Don't worry, we'll get football. Call it football.
It's football. So I follow football, but actually my favorite sport is actually rugby. I love watching rugby, and next year. We have tickets to go see England play Scotland in Edinburgh.
Oh, that should be a dub for the Scots. They look good this year, didn't they? I didn't even talk to you about that. How good did they look this year?
Here we go.
Absolutely,
they did look very good.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I've never seen a Six Nations game before.
I don't think
I'm so excited to go.
But Murrayfield's a pretty good in Edinburgh. It's a pretty good stadium to go to. I've been to see a game there. It's good.
Yeah,
That'll be fun.
The only problem is it's in February. It's gonna be
in Scotland, cold as balls. Yeah, that's gonna be good luck with that. And probably and Scotland probably raining as well.
Probably raining and snowing all in the same day.
Yeah, Scott sleet, snow, sleet, rain in one day. Yeah, I believe it.
Probably get all of it in half an hour
in the same game. Yeah, that's awesome. That'd be exciting though, and everything should be pretty back to normal by then as well.
It should be. Yeah, I'm really excited about that. I'm really thrilled to do that.
And to wrap it up, I don't want to take any more of your time. What are some projects you have coming up, if you have any, in terms of like, do you have any classes you might be taking, anything that you have going on in your own life?
Right now, because of the last year, my plan is to have no plan.
Okay.
So I don't have anything really specific. I'm really just right now managing the transition back from sort of the virtual world that all of us have been living in back to sort of that kind of hybrid that's probably going to be around for a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, I don't know. I mean, the world has changed a little bit from my own personal world, so I'm trying to figure out what my direction is going to be in the next year or two. Both Diane and I have some ideas of things that are really just in the gestation process.
Would you ever host your own seminars, courses?
That may be something that we might want to, is something we've been talking about. We've been talking to some other people to find sort of logistically how that would work. Mm-hmm. I've even thought one of the reasons why I kept bothering David so much to try and get on your podcast was to kind of have some experience of it, so possibly doing my own. And just generally other things, doing a little bit more writing. I think that I have experience and some knowledge that I might be valuable to share with certain people.
Do you know what your podcast is going to be named?
I haven't decided yet.
Okay.
I'm still thinking of that.
I could tell you.
Yeah. My original one was because at one point I was hoping to open a gym called All Cock and Balls, but apparently that doesn't work.
All cock and barbells, it should be called.
Hey, there
you go. All cock and bells. There you go. All cock and bells. There you go.
Anyway. So I don't know. I mean, right now things are just sort of so much in flux. So I'm just trying to figure out what's happening tomorrow, let alone anything really concrete. But I think hopefully for all of us, the past year has given us a moment to kind of look back and look inwardly and to sort of kind of reassess a few things, and hopefully things might be a little bit different for our futures. I hope, anyway.
Is there anywhere where any of our listeners could, maybe contact you, reach out to you if they have any questions, if they're interested in working with you?
They can reach out. I do not have a social media presence.
What about we got to make them one?
Maybe we could post like your wife's social media, and that will be like the interim.
I do have a Facebook page.
Okay.
You can find me also at Hoboken Barbell website.com. Cool. I don't know what my Facebook page is. I have no idea. I've posted, I think 5 times in about 7 years.
You post these dissertations about random things, Keith. It's like,
because I'm a random person, David.
Like some words I don't even understand. I mean, ESL, right? But
I can lend you a dictionary, David.
You should jump on that. What was it? Something and spells. Old Cockham Bells Instagram page. You should just save it for and when you want it. Then it's there. You have the name
right before somebody takes it.
Like the website. Once you have the what's your domain? The domain name. Yeah, have the domain name.
Well, allcockandballs.com is already taken, by the way.
So there you go. All Cock and Bells. All Cock and Bells.
You definitely looked it up, and you went, and it took you somewhere you didn't want to.
Yeah. Don't type that in, by the way. That'll take you some very dark places that you do not want to go to, even for me. And I'm pretty unshockable.
All right, Keith. Thanks for joining us. It was really fun.
Yeah, great talking to you, man.
It's been a pleasure, guys. I've enjoyed it. It's great to see you guys again.
Hope you're all doing
well. Likewise.
All right.
Likewise. Take care, Keith.
All right. See you, Keith.
All right. Be well.
Take care. Bye.
Cool.
That was a good catch up. I haven't told Angel, I don't know about you, but I haven't spoken to him since we left, I don't think.
I didn't see him. I saw his bike outside of the gym locked up, and I was man, I should find
the closest you got to seeing it, but I saw his bike.
Yeah, but I did see Diana the other day. I actually saw her today.
What time were you there, Angel?
I was there at 7. I also saw D Nash. D Nash is back in the building, back in action.
I had a client at 8:30, so you probably dipped by then.
Yeah, I was out.
Okay. David was getting his coffee at that point.
Not even. I was probably still asleep.
On the train, just sleepwalking.
Yeah.
It was good to catch up with Keith. It's good to see that he's healthy and he's got stuff that he's doing and all that. I mean, that 100-mile bike ride, that's got to be. You got to build some butt calluses.
I was thinking the same thing because it's not. You have to you have to build that tolerance for being on a seat for that long.
Keith, so I got a bike off of Keith that he wasn't using anymore. I'm like, I'll take it from you. He's like, all right, you got to come to Jersey City to pick it up. I'm like, I got it. And it was a fixie, so you can't stop pedaling. So I got it. So I got it from his place. I rode it till the PATH train, took the PATH to Christopher Street, rode the bike or attempted to ride it from Christopher Street up to my apartment on 141. And that's a pretty long way.
It's like 10, 11 miles.
Maybe, yeah. It took me a while, and my ass, oh my God. It hurt.
David couldn't get off to his apartment. He had to get going all the way to Yonkers.
Yeah.
I live there. I guess I'm not going home.
Dude,
Can't
man,
stop.
For the next week, my ass hurt. Like it just hurt. It hurt to sit on my couch.
Damn.
Just to lay down.
I
I
still
just got
have
this
it?
big. I got this
I still have
image.
it, yeah.
I got this image of David just getting off at Christmas Street on the bike. We're like, fuck, I'm already in Holland, but I guess I'm not going off.
I almost
just
like, I
keeps
could've-
going.
I should've
Circles on
fucking
the
got off.
GW bridge and just keeps going.
I should have got off at like 23rd Street. 20, yeah, I should have got off on 33rd Street. That would've
Yeah.
made it
That's
so
what you're
easy.
claiming, but I don't believe it. But all right. How are you guys been? You been good? Or
Everybody's
excited
good.
for the weekend?
Yeah,
Same
it's
shit,
clearing up.
definitely.
It was cloudy, it was rainy, but now it's clearing up. So
Humid as anything this morning.
That's true.
Ah.
all right, but we'll call it
Wrap it
here.
up.
We'll wrap it up, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Be safe, guys. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Charlie.